I never thought 3 words scribbled on divorce papers would destroy my wife's entire world. When Ava slid that cream folder across the country club table, smirking as she signed "Poor Loser" next to her name, she had no idea she was humiliating a man worth $500 million. She thought she was upgrading from a broke mechanic to her rich consultant boyfriend. But what she didn't know was that her upgrade had been stealing millions from her own family's company, and I had the security footage to prove it. The judge's voice still echoes in my head as he read my net worth out loud in that packed courtroom, watching Ava's face crumble as her perfect little world came crashing down. But the real shock? That was just the beginning of what I discovered about the woman I married and the elaborate scheme designed to destroy me. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because this story of betrayal, hidden fortunes, and cold revenge will leave you questioning everything you think you know about love and money. The mimosa glass felt cold against my palm as I watched Ava slide the cream folder across the white tablecloth. Saturday morning at the country club always smelled like fresh cut grass and expensive perfume, the kind of place where people whispered instead of talked, and every smile had a price tag. "Happy anniversary, baby," she said, but her voice had that sharp edge I'd been hearing more and more lately. I knew what was coming before I opened it. The thick papers inside had that official look. Divorce papers. My stomach dropped, but I kept my face steady. Around us, the other tables got quiet. People pretended to cut their eggs Benedict while their ears stretched toward our conversation. Ava's blonde hair caught the morning sunlight as she leaned forward. Her white dress probably cost more than most people made in a month. Everything about her screamed money and class. Everything I wasn't supposed to have. "Just sign where the sticky notes are," she said, pulling out a gold pen. "I made it easy for you." I flipped through the pages. Standard stuff. She wanted the house, the cars, everything we'd built together. Not that there was much we'd built. Most of what mattered to me, she never knew about anyway. Then I saw it. At the bottom of the acknowledgement page, she'd already signed her name with a little note underneath. "Poor loser." The words hit me like a slap. Around us, I heard someone giggle, felt eyes burning into my back. Ava smiled that pretty smile she used when she wanted to hurt someone, but look innocent doing it. 2 tables away, Trent Hale sat with his newspaper and coffee. He wasn't even trying to hide his smirk. Ava's business consultant, who'd been consulting a little too close lately, his expensive suit and perfect teeth made my work clothes feel heavier. I folded the papers and slipped them into my jacket pocket. Didn't say a word. Just pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Luis. "Need the truck later." "That's it?" Ava asked. Her green eyes flashed with something between disappointment and anger. "No begging? No crying?" I stood up slow, putting my napkin on the table. "Nope." She wanted a scene. Wanted me to break down or get angry or give everyone something to talk about. But I'd learned a long time ago that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away quiet. I left her sitting there with her expensive friends and her gold pen and her mean little words. The parking lot asphalt burned hot under the Georgia sun. My pickup truck looked out of place next to all the BMWs and Mercedes. The paint was faded and there was a dent in the passenger door from where Luis backed into a pole last month. I was loading the divorce papers into the glove compartment when footsteps crunched on the gravel behind me. "Well, well, looks like it's upgrade season for Ava." I turned around to see Trent walking over with his hands in his pockets. He had that fake friendly smile rich people used when they wanted to kick you while pretending to help you up. "Guess some people just outgrow their starter marriages," he said, looking at my truck like it was something he'd scrape off his shoe. I closed the glove compartment and leaned against the truck. Trent was tall and smooth with the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about rent money. His watch probably cost more than I made in 6 months. At least, that's what he thought. "You're gonna do just fine," I said. Ava likes her men shiny. He laughed, but it sounded nervous. Hey, no hard feelings, right? Just business. You understand? I understood plenty. Understood that he thought I was some poor mechanic who'd gotten lucky for a while. Understood that he saw me as a problem that had just solved itself. Sure thing, Trent. Take care of yourself. I climbed into the truck and started the engine. Through the windshield, I saw Eleanor Sinclair standing by the club entrance. Ava's mom had her arms crossed, and her face looked tight with something that might have been regret. She stepped forward like she wanted to say something, then stopped. Our eyes met through the glass, and she mouthed, "I'm sorry." So soft, I almost missed it. I nodded once and backed out of the space. In my rearview mirror, I watched Ava pose for a selfie with Trent's arm around her waist. She was already posting about her new life before the old one was even cold. I drove toward home with my lawyer's number already dialing in my head. Time to make some calls about sealed financial disclosures. Time to show them what a poor loser really looked like. My apartment was quiet when I got home Saturday evening. The kind of quiet that felt peaceful instead of lonely. I'd never needed much space, just a place to eat my takeout and watch TV with the sound low. The Thai food was getting cold on the counter while I sat there thinking about Ava's signature on those papers. Poor loser. Like she was signing a yearbook instead of ending a marriage. I got up and walked to the bedroom closet. Behind my work shirts and jeans, pushed way back against the wall, sat a small fireproof safe. I'd had it for years, even before I met Ava. Some things were too important to trust to bank deposit boxes or lawyers' offices. The combination clicked open easy. Inside were copies of documents that told a different story than the one everyone thought they knew about Jamal Reed, the poor mechanic. Trust unit certificates from when my grandfather's land got bought out for a shopping center. Pre-sale agreements from when the city needed part of our family property for a highway expansion. And the big one, a pending buyout deal for mineral rights that had been sitting quiet for 3 years. Every single piece of paper was dated before I met Ava, before our wedding, before she ever had a claim to anything. I pulled out a yellow legal pad and started writing a list for my lawyer. Full financial disclosure. Everything predates marriage. Keep it sealed until court. No drama, just facts. My phone buzzed with a text from Luis. "You good, brother?" I typed back, working the plan. Luis had been my partner at the tow yard for 5 years. He knew me better than anybody, which meant he knew I wasn't the type to go down without a fight. He just didn't know what kind of fight this was going to be. I locked the safe and set it back behind my clothes. Then, I set my alarm for 6 a.m. and tried to get some sleep. Tomorrow was going to be a long day, and I had phone calls to make. The plan was simple. Show them exactly who they'd been laughing at. Sunday morning came gray and cool. The tow yard smelled like diesel fuel and coffee when I pulled up at 6:15. Luis was already there with 2 cups from the gas station next door. "You sleep at all?" he asked, handing me the coffee. "Some." I took a long sip. It was black and bitter, the way I liked it. "We need to talk." Luis followed me over to where a Toyota sat crumpled against our fence. Somebody had tried to take the highway exit too fast last night. The driver walked away, but the car wasn't going anywhere without a miracle. "Insurance is gonna total this one," Luis said, walking around the wreck. "Probably." I kicked at a piece of twisted bumper. "Look, man, things are gonna get messy for a while. Ava filed divorce papers yesterday." Figured that was coming. She'd been acting different lately. Luis had met Ava exactly 3 times in the 2 years we'd been married. She never came to the yard, never wanted to hang out with my friends, never fit into the parts of my life that mattered. Looking back, that should have told me something. "I need you to pull all the security footage from the last month," I said. "Everything from our cameras, plus anything from the lot next door that might show our gate." "You think she's been snooping around here?" "Not her. But maybe her new boyfriend. Luis nodded slow. He didn't ask questions he didn't need answers to. That's what made him a good partner. Just in case, right? He said. Just in case. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my lawyer's number. David Chen had handled the paperwork when I bought into the tow business. He was smart and quiet and didn't judge people by their work clothes. David, it's Jamal. I need to file some financial disclosures for a divorce proceeding. Everything's sealed until we get to court. I listened to his questions and gave him simple answers. Monday morning works fine. And David, this needs to stay between us until the judge opens it. When I hung up, Luis was watching me with a concerned look. You sure about this, brother? Rich people fight dirty. I'm not fighting dirty. I'm just fighting smart. I finished my coffee and tossed the cup in our dumpster. Above us, seagulls circled and cried like they were laughing at some joke we couldn't hear. You know what the funny thing is? I said. She called me a poor loser, signed it right there on the papers like she was autographing a photo. Ava always did think she was better than everybody. Yeah. Well, Monday morning, she's gonna find out what poor really looks like. Monday morning, the Fulton County Courthouse buzzed with the usual crowd. Lawyers in expensive suits, people in their best clothes trying to look respectable, and clerks moving papers around like they were handling pieces of people's lives, which, I guess, they were. David Chen met me by the metal detectors. He looked like every other attorney. Dark suit, leather briefcase, tired eyes that had seen too much human drama. You sure about the sealed disclosure? He asked as we walked toward the family court clerk's office. Once this gets read in court, it's public record. I'm sure. The filing took 20 minutes. David handed over a thick manila envelope with my name on it and a red sealed stamp across the top. The clerk took it without much interest and added it to a stack of other people's secrets. Preliminary hearing is set for Friday at 9 a.m., she said, handing David a slip of paper. Judge Carter's courtroom. We were walking back toward the lobby when I saw Ava's lawyer hurrying up the steps outside. Margaret something or other, with the perfect gray hair and the kind of confidence that came from winning cases for rich people. She swept past us without a glance, late for something important. Probably billing Ava $300 an hour to be late. She's good, David said, watching her disappear into an elevator. She's gonna need to be. I checked my phone while David went to make copies. Ava had posted another photo on Instagram, her and Trent at some fancy restaurant with a caption that said, choosing better. 53 likes already. The comments were all heart eye emojis and, you deserve happiness, girl, from people who didn't know the whole story. I put the phone away, without liking or commenting, let her have her moment. Friday would come soon enough. We're all set, David said, coming back with a folder full of official-looking papers. Judge Carter's clerk will call if she needs anything else before Friday. Outside on the courthouse steps, the late morning sun felt warm on my face. People walked by with their own problems, their own papers to file, their own lives falling apart or coming together. I called Luis from the truck. We're set for Friday, I told him. You nervous? I thought about it. About Ava sitting in that courtroom when Judge Carter opened my envelope. About the look on Trent's face when he realized who he'd been calling a poor loser. Nah, I said, not nervous, just ready. Monday afternoon, I found myself standing in the lobby of Sinclair Brand's headquarters. All glass and steel and marble that echoed when you walked. The kind of place designed to make regular people feel small. I was there to return Ava's apartment key to the front desk. Could have mailed it, but something made me want to do it in person. Maybe I wanted one last look at the world she'd chosen over me. The receptionist took the key with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'll make sure Mrs. Sinclair gets this, she said. Behind me, I heard whispers from a group of women in business suits. They weren't trying to be quiet about it. That's him, the husband. I heard she's finally upgrading. About time. You can't take a mechanic to board meetings. I kept my face neutral and headed for the elevators. But before I got there, the conference room doors opened and Trent walked out, adjusting his gold cufflinks like he was posing for a magazine. He saw me and his mouth curved into a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. He mouthed the words, "Good luck, champ," and gave me a little salute. I was about to leave when I heard someone call my name. Jamal, could I speak with you for a moment? Eleanor Sinclair stood by the reception desk in a navy blue dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Ava's mom had always been polite to me, but polite in the way rich people were polite to the help. 5 minutes? She asked. I followed her to a quiet corner where fake plants tried to make the corporate lobby feel more human. I want to apologize, she said, and her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. For the things my family has said, the way we've treated you. You don't need to. Yes, I do. She looked out at the lobby full of people in expensive clothes carrying expensive briefcases. My family taught Ava to sneer at people who work with their hands, taught her that money was the only thing that mattered. I'm not proud of that. Ava makes her own choices. She does, but we gave her the tools to make the wrong ones. Eleanor's eyes were sad in a way that makeup couldn't hide. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. I just hope, I hope you won't fight ugly. For everyone's sake. The elevator dinged and the doors slid open. Inside, I could see my reflection in the polished steel, work shirt, faded jeans, hands that showed every day I'd spent under the hood of a car. I don't plan to, I said. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, I saw Eleanor standing there with pain written all over her face. She knew something was coming, maybe not what, but something. I drove back to the tow yard thinking about her words. Fight ugly. That's what rich people always expected from people like me. Get angry, get loud, make a scene so they could point and say, see, that's why they don't belong. But I'd learned something different growing up. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is stay quiet and let the truth speak for itself. Friday was 3 days away. 3 days for Ava to enjoy her new life and her mean little jokes. After that, we'd see who was really laughing. Tuesday morning brought gray skies and the smell of rain. I spent the first hour at the yard going over the security camera footage with Luis. Nothing exciting, just the usual comings and goings of customers dropping off wrecked cars and picking up fixed ones. Then, Luis pulled up footage from 2 weeks ago. You're gonna want to see this, he said, pointing at the computer screen. There was Trent's silver BMW pulling into the lot next to ours at 11:30 p.m. The timestamp showed it was a Tuesday night, same night Ava had said she was working late on quarterly reports. What's he doing here? I asked. Luis clicked forward through the footage. At 11:47, Trent got out of his car and walked toward the back of our building. He was carrying something, a canvas tote bag with the Sinclair Brands logo on the side. That's the employee entrance to Ava's company, Luis said. Building shares a wall with us. We watched Trent disappear from our camera's view, then reappear 20 minutes later without the bag. He drove off like he owned the world. Pull up the footage from their parking garage if you can, I said. Luis was good with computers, better than he had any right to be for a guy who spent his days fixing transmissions. 20 minutes later, he had access to the adjacent lot's security system. There, he said, pointing at a different angle of the same night. Look at the timestamp. This camera caught Trent using what looked like an employee keycard to get into a service door. The bag he'd been carrying was gone when he came back out. And check this out, Luis said, pulling up footage from the next morning. 7 a.m. A different car in the lot, Some kind of sedan I didn't recognize. The driver got out and opened his trunk. There was the same canvas tote bag, plus two more just like it. Someone's moving company property around after hours, I said. Question is, what's in the bags? I stared at the screen for a long minute. Trent thought he was smart, sneaking around in the middle of the night using Ava's access to move whatever he was moving. Problem was, he didn't know about the cameras. Make me a copy of all this, I said. Everything from the last month. What are you gonna do with it? Nothing yet. But if someone's stealing from Sinclair Brands, that's not really my business. That's between them and whoever handles their security. Luis nodded slow. You're not gonna tell Ava? Ava's not my problem anymore. But her company having a theft problem? I shrugged. That's just information. What they do with it is up to them. 20 minutes later, Luis handed me a thumb drive with all the footage. I slipped it into my pocket next to the divorce papers that still had "Poor Loser" written on them in Ava's careful handwriting. Wednesday couldn't come fast enough. Friday morning arrived gray and cold. The courthouse parking lot was fuller than usual. Word had gotten out somehow about the hearing, and people loved watching rich folks' drama play out in public. I met David Chen by the courthouse steps at 8:45. He looked nervous in the way lawyers got when they weren't sure what was about to happen. You ready for this? He asked. Been ready. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Ava sat in the front row wearing a white blazer that made her look like she was attending a church service instead of a divorce hearing. Her lawyer had papers spread out on the table like she was planning a military campaign. 2 rows behind them, Trent sat with his phone out, probably texting someone about how this was all just a formality. I took my seat and waited. Judge Carter was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and the kind of tired eyes that had seen every type of human foolishness. She'd been on the family court bench for 15 years, and word was she didn't have patience for games. This is a preliminary hearing in the matter of Sinclair versus Reed, she said, opening a file folder. I have before me a sealed financial disclosure that was filed on Monday. Ava straightened in her chair. Trent looked up from his phone. As required by Georgia law, I will now read the key findings of this disclosure into the public record. Judge Carter opened my envelope and pulled out the papers David had prepared. She scanned them for a moment, and I saw her eyebrows go up just a little. The disclosed aggregate net worth of the respondent, Jamal Reed, is approximately $500 million. The courtroom went dead quiet. Then someone gasped. Another person whispered, "What?" And chairs started creaking as people turned to stare at me. Ava's mouth fell open. She turned in her seat to look at me like she'd never seen me before in her life. Trent's phone slipped out of his hand and clattered to the floor. The court notes that these assets appear to predate the marriage by several years, Judge Carter continued, her voice steady as concrete. Land holdings, trust distributions, and pending mineral rights. Agreements all show dates of acquisition prior to the union of the parties. Ava was shaking her head like she could make the words disappear. Her lawyer was frantically shuffling through papers, looking for something that would make sense of what she'd just heard. We'll schedule a final hearing for next Friday to settle the distribution of marital assets, Judge Carter said. Given the prenuptial agreement and the timing of these holdings, this should be straightforward. She closed the file and looked out at the packed courtroom. That's all for today. As people started filing out, I could hear the whispers starting. 500 million? A mechanic? How is that even possible? I stood up and walked toward the exit without looking at anyone, but in the corridor outside, Ava caught up with me. Jamal, wait. Her voice was small and shaky. We need to talk. I turned around. Up close, I could see that her perfect makeup couldn't hide the shock in her green eyes. We can fix this, she said, reaching for my arm. We can fix us. I made a mistake, but we can end this with respect, I said, pulling away gently. That's all we can do now. I walked to the stairwell and left her standing there in the corridor with all her expensive friends and her gold pen and her mean little signature that didn't look so funny anymore. Outside, the Georgia sun was trying to break through the clouds. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, listening to my phone buzz with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. The news was already getting out. Mechanic hid millions from heiress wife would probably be trending by lunchtime. But that was okay. Let them talk. Let them wonder how a poor loser ended up with $500 million in his pocket. The truth was simpler than they'd ever imagine. My grandfather had owned 40 acres outside Atlanta, back when it was just farmland. The city grew around it, and developers came calling with bigger and bigger checks. Granddad was smart. Instead of selling outright, he negotiated trust units and mineral rights and land use agreements that kept paying out year after year. He left it all to me when I was 18, with one rule: keep it quiet until you need it. I'd kept it quiet for 12 years, through community college and trade school and meeting Ava and falling in love with a woman who thought I wasn't good enough for her world. Now I needed it. Not for revenge, not to hurt anyone, just to show them who they'd really been laughing at. I started the truck and drove home to figure out what came next. The courthouse corridor felt different after Judge Carter's words. People moved slower, talked quieter, kept glancing back at me like I might disappear if they blinked. $500 million had a way of changing how folks looked at you. I found myself standing by the vending machines, watching Ava's lawyer whisper frantically into her phone. Margaret something or other looked like someone had just told her the sky was falling. Ava appeared beside me, still wearing that white blazer that now seemed too bright for the situation. My lawyer wants to discuss terms, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. That's what lawyers are for. David Chen walked over with a manila folder under his arm. Mrs. Sinclair's counsel has requested a brief meeting. Conference room down the hall. I nodded and followed them to a small room with a scratch table and chairs that had seen better days. Margaret sat across from me with her perfect gray hair and her expensive pen, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Reed, she began, given this new information, my client would like to propose revised terms. The prenup stands, I said, no spousal support, clean division of marital assets, which isn't much since everything I own predates our marriage. Ava shifted in her chair. Jamal, be reasonable. 2 years of marriage should count for something. It did count for something. It counted for me thinking you loved me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Margaret scribbled notes on her legal pad while David sat quiet beside me. My client is willing to waive any claim to spousal support, Margaret said, in exchange for a modest settlement. Say $10 million. I almost laughed. For what? For signing poor loser on divorce papers in front of half the country club? That was a mistake, Ava said quickly. I was angry. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking plenty clearly. You just thought you knew who you were talking to. Margaret tried again. Mr. Reed, surely you understand that the dissolution of a marriage, regardless of circumstances— The circumstances, I said, are that your client has been sleeping with Trent Hale for 3 months. The circumstances are that she humiliated me in public because she thought I couldn't do anything about it. Ava's face went pale. How did you— Doesn't matter how I know. What matters is what happens next. I stood up and straightened my jacket. No settlement, no spousal support. The prenup gets enforced exactly as written. We split whatever we bought together, which adds up to about $40,000 in furniture and a joint checking account with $1,800 in it. This is insane, Margaret said. No court in Georgia would— Every court in Georgia will, David interrupted. The assets predate the marriage. There's a valid prenuptial agreement, and there's evidence of adultery, which affects spousal support eligibility even without a prenup. I walked to the door and stopped. Ava, you wanted to upgrade. Congratulations. Hope Trent's worth it. In the hallway, I could feel them watching me leave. Ava, in her white blazer, probably calculating how much this was going to cost her. Margaret, with her expensive pen, probably calculating how much she could bill for a case that had just blown up in her face. My phone started buzzing before I reached the parking lot. Unknown numbers, probably reporters who'd been listening in the courtroom. I turned it off and drove toward the tow yard in blessed silence. Friday afternoon brought rain and the kind of gray sky that made everything look washed out. The tow yard felt different when I got back, quieter, like the whole world had shifted a few degrees while I was gone. Luis was in the office with a cup of coffee and a newspaper spread across the desk. He looked up when I walked in. How'd it go? About like we expected. He folded the paper and pushed it toward me. The headline read, Local Mechanics Hidden Fortune Shocks Divorce Court. That was fast, I said. Blog picked it up first. Then, the local news. Now, everybody's an expert on your business. I scanned the article. Most of it was wrong. They had my net worth at over 500 million instead of approximately, and they'd somehow decided I was a mysterious entrepreneur instead of a guy whose grandfather had been smart about land deals. Look at this, Luis said, pointing to the comments section. Half these people think you're some kind of con artist. The other half think Ava's a gold digger. What do you think? I think people need to mind their own business. My phone had 17 voicemail messages and 43 texts from numbers I didn't recognize. I deleted them all without listening. You gonna talk to any of these reporters? Luis asked. Nope. Good. Let them make up their own stories. I walked over to the coffee pot and poured myself a cup. The rain was getting heavier outside, drumming against the metal roof like fingers on a table. You know what the funny part is? I said. All these people acting like I was hiding something, like I owed anyone an explanation for money my family earned. Ava's probably feeling pretty stupid right about now. Ava's probably feeling pretty angry right about now. Angry people do stupid things. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from her. We need to talk. This doesn't have to be ugly. I showed it to Luis. You gonna answer? Not yet. Let her sit with it for a while. I finished my coffee and walked over to the window. Across the street, a black sedan sat in the parking lot of a closed gas station. Tinted windows, engine running. Could have been anyone. Could have been nothing. Or it could have been someone trying to figure out what other secrets the poor mechanic might be hiding. Luis, I said, how many copies of that thumb drive did you make? 3. One for you, one for me, one in the safe. Good. And the backup security footage? Cloud storage, plus physical backup. Why? I pointed at the sedan. Just wondering if anyone else is going to get curious about our business. Luis looked out the window and his jaw tightened. You think they're watching us? I think rich people don't like surprises, and I just gave them a big one. The sedan pulled out of the gas station lot and drove, slowly past our fence. Through the tinted windows, I couldn't see who was inside, but I memorized the license plate just in case. We'll keep our eyes open, Luis said. Yeah, and Luis, maybe it's time to forward that footage to the right people. Sinclair Brand Security? Their internal audit department. Let them figure out what their boy Trent was doing with those bags. Saturday morning brought clear skies and the kind of crisp air that made you want to breathe deep. I was supposed to meet Eleanor Sinclair at Mel's Diner at 8 o'clock. She'd called Friday night and asked if we could talk. Mel's was the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that could wake the dead. Working folks came here for breakfast before their shifts, and the waitresses knew everyone's order by heart. Eleanor was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a white coffee cup. She looked different away from the country club, smaller somehow, more human. "Thank you for coming," she said as I slid into the seat across from her. "No problem." The waitress brought me coffee without asking. Black, no sugar. That's how I always took it, and somehow she remembered from the few times I'd eaten here over the years. "I owe you an apology," Eleanor said. "A real one this time." "For what?" "For raising a daughter who thinks money makes her better than other people. For teaching her that a man's worth gets measured by his bank account instead of his character." She looked out the window at the early morning traffic. People driving to jobs that mattered, building lives that had meaning beyond the numbers in their accounts. "When Ava was little," Eleanor continued, "she used to bring me flowers she'd picked from the yard. Dandelions mostly, weeds, but she thought they were beautiful. Kids see things different. They do, until we teach them not to." Eleanor's voice got quiet. "I taught her that dandelions were weeds, that only expensive roses mattered. I taught her to look down on anything that wasn't perfect and polished and approved by the right people." The diner was filling up with the Saturday morning crowd, construction workers grabbing breakfast before job sites, nurses getting off night shifts, people who worked hard and went home tired and didn't spend their time judging other people's flowers. "She didn't learn that overnight," I said. "No, it took years. Years of me making little comments about the right neighborhoods and the right schools and the right kind of people." Eleanor's eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. By the time I realized what I'd done, she was already grown, already convinced that love was a business transaction. "What changed your mind?" "Watching you at family dinners, watching you listen to her talk about her day, really listen. Watching you fix her car in the driveway and refuse to let me pay you for it. Watching you treat our housekeeper like family instead of help." She pulled a folded napkin from her purse and dabbed at her eyes. "I knew you were a good man. I knew Ava was lucky to have you, but I never said so. I was too worried about what the neighbors would think." "That's over now." "Yes, it is." Eleanor reached across the table and touched my hand briefly. "I can't fix what she did to you. I can't fix what I taught her. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. And I want you to know that whatever happens next, I won't let her drag your name through the mud." I believed her. Eleanor Sinclair might have been born into money, but she had something Ava didn't. Something that couldn't be bought or inherited or learned from etiquette classes. She had a conscience. "I appreciate that," I said, "but I can handle whatever comes." "I know you can, but you shouldn't have to handle it alone." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small piece of paper. "That's my direct number, not the house phone, my personal cell. If you need anything, if anyone gives you trouble, you call me." I took the paper and slipped it into my wallet. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just promise me you'll be careful. Rich people don't like being embarrassed, and my daughter just got embarrassed in a very public way." We finished our coffee and said goodbye in the parking lot. Eleanor got into her silver Mercedes, and I climbed into my pickup truck. Before she drove away, she rolled down her window. "Jamal?" "Yeah? Those dandelions she used to bring me? I wish I'd kept them." Saturday afternoon, I was in the office catching up on paperwork when Luis knocked on the door. His face had the kind of serious look that meant trouble was coming. "Got something you need to see," he said, closing the blinds and setting a new thumb drive on the desk. "More footage?" "Oh yeah, much more." Luis pulled up a video file on the computer. The timestamp showed Tuesday night, 2 weeks ago, same night as the other footage, but this was from a different camera. "This is from the loading dock behind Sinclair Brands," he said. "Friend of mine works security for the building management company. He pulled this for me as a favor." The video showed Trent's BMW pulling up to the service entrance at 11:30 p.m., But this angle caught something our cameras had missed. Trent wasn't alone. A second figure got out of the passenger side, smaller, wearing a dark hoodie with the hood up. They moved quickly toward the employee entrance, and Trent used a keycard to let them both inside. 20 minutes later, they came back out carrying 3 canvas bags each, 6 bags total. They loaded everything into Trent's trunk and drove off. "Run it back," I said, "when the other person gets out of the car." Luis rewound the video and played it in slow motion. As the figure in the hoodie turned toward the camera, the security light caught their face for just a second. It was Ava. "Well," I said, "that's interesting." "Gets better," Luis said, clicking to another file. "Check out Wednesday morning." This footage showed the same loading dock at 7 a.m. A white van pulled up and 2 men in coveralls got out. They met Trent in the parking lot and he handed over something small. Keys, maybe, or a flash drive. Then they opened the back of the van. Inside were dozens of canvas bags identical to the ones Trent and Ava had loaded the night before. "Industrial espionage," Luis said. "They're stealing prototypes, trade secrets, whatever Sinclair Brands keeps in those bags, and selling them to competitors. Has to be. Why else would you need a van full of company property at 7 in the morning?" I leaned back in my chair and thought about it. Trent, the consultant, getting inside access through his relationship with the CEO's daughter. Ava providing the key cards and after-hours access. A nice little side business selling company secrets to the highest bidder. "How much you think something like this is worth?" Luis asked. "Depends what's in the bags. Could be anything from customer lists to product designs to financial records. If it's the right information, could be worth millions." And Ava's right in the middle of it. I looked at the timestamp on the footage. 2 weeks ago was right around the time Ava started acting different, more secretive, more hostile toward me, more eager to end our marriage and move on to her new life with Trent. Maybe she wasn't just upgrading husbands. Maybe she was upgrading to a whole new business model. "What do you want to do with this?" Luis asked. I thought about Eleanor sitting in that diner booth, apologizing for raising a daughter who'd lost her way. I thought about Judge Carter reading my financial disclosure in that packed courtroom. I thought about Ava's signature on those divorce papers. Poor loser. "Forward it to Sinclair Brand's internal audit department," I said. "Anonymous tip about unauthorized after-hours access to company property." "That's it? No demands, no threats, no nothing?" "That's it. Let the company handle their own security problems. Ava's gonna know it came from you." "Probably, but she can't prove it. And besides, if she's stealing from her own family's company, that's between her and them." Luis made a copy of the files and prepared an anonymous email to Sinclair Brand's audit department. The subject line read, "Unauthorized access concerns. Security footage attached." "Sent," he said. I watched him delete the draft from the computer and lean back in his chair. "You know this is gonna blow up her whole world, right?" he said. "Her world was already blown up. This is just making sure the pieces land where they belong." My phone buzzed with another text from Ava. "Please call me. We can work this out." I turned off the phone and walked to the window. The black sedan was back, parked in the same spot across the street. Same tinted windows, same running engine. "Luis," I said, "you still got that friend in building security?" "Yeah, why?" "Ask him to keep an eye on the audit department next week. If anyone starts asking questions about anonymous tips, I want to know about it." "You think they're watching us?" "I think we're about to find out how far rich people will go to protect their secrets." Sunday brought rain and the kind of gray morning that made you want to stay in bed. But I was up early anyway, sitting on my front porch with coffee and the newspaper, trying to make sense of the last few days. The local paper had picked up the story about my hidden fortune, but they'd gotten most of the details wrong. According to them, I was a mysterious entrepreneur who'd built a business empire while pretending to be a simple mechanic. The truth was simpler and less dramatic. My grandfather had owned land. The land became valuable. He'd been smart about contracts and patient about timing. I inherited the results and kept quiet about it because quiet was easier than explaining. But now that the secret was out, everything felt different. People drove by my apartment slower. The phone rang constantly with unknown numbers. Yesterday, a reporter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution had knocked on my door asking for an interview. I was thinking about all this when a car pulled up across the street. Not the black sedan this time, a silver Mercedes that I recognized. Eleanor Sinclair got out and walked across the wet pavement to my porch steps. "Morning," she said. "Hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all. Coffee's fresh if you want some." She climbed the steps and took the chair beside mine. "I can't stay long. I just wanted to tell you something." I poured her a cup from the thermos I'd brought outside. "Ava came to see me last night," Eleanor said. "She was upset." "About the hearing?" "About a lot of things. Apparently, there's some kind of investigation starting at the company. Internal audit, security issues. She thinks you had something to do with it." I kept my face neutral. I don't know anything about Ava's business. I figured, but she's convinced you're trying to destroy her life. Eleanor sipped her coffee and watched a cat pick its way carefully across the wet street. "Is she right?" she asked. "About what?" "About you trying to destroy her life." I thought about the footage Luis had sent to the audit department, about Trent and Ava loading bags into his car in the middle of the night, about the van full of stolen company property. "No," I said. "I'm not trying to destroy anything. I'm just trying to protect myself." "Good, because revenge has a way of eating up the person who seeks it. This isn't about revenge. This is about making sure she doesn't drag me down with whatever she's gotten herself into." Eleanor nodded slowly. "She made her choices. Now she'll have to live with the consequences." We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, drinking coffee and watching the rain. Finally, Eleanor stood up and handed me her empty cup. "Thank you for being honest with me," she said. "Thank you for giving me the chance." She was halfway to her car when she turned back. "Jamal, that investigation at the company, whatever they find, it won't be your fault. Remember that." After she drove away, I sat on the porch for another hour thinking about what she'd said. Whatever they find, it won't be your fault. But I had a feeling it was going to feel like my fault anyway. My phone buzzed with a text from Luis. "You see the news yet?" I hadn't. I'd been avoiding the news, avoiding social media, avoiding anything that might tell me what people were saying about the mechanic with the hidden millions. But eventually, you have to face the world you've created. I went inside and turned on my laptop. The first headline I saw made my stomach drop. "CEO under investigation as company stock plummets." The article was brief but brutal. Sinclair Brands had confirmed an ongoing internal investigation into potential security breaches and unauthorized access to company assets. The stock price had fallen 12% in after-hours trading. Industry analysts were concerned about corporate governance issues. Ava's carefully constructed world was crashing down, and it was happening fast. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Hello? Mr. Reed? This is Sarah Chen from Channel 11 News. We're doing a story about the situation at Sinclair Brands, and we'd like to get your comment." No comment. "Sir, we understand you recently went through divorce proceedings with Ava Sinclair, and now there are questions about—" I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number, same type of call. I turned off the ringer and sat back down on the porch. The rain was getting heavier, drumming against the roof like an angry conversation. Across the street, the silver Mercedes was gone, But the black sedan was back. This time, I could see someone sitting in the driver's seat. I finished my coffee and went inside to figure out what came next. Monday morning came with sirens and the smell of smoke. I was getting dressed for work when Luis called, his voice tight with worry. "Brother, you need to get down here. Now." "What's wrong?" "Someone broke into the yard last night, tried to burn down the office." I was in my truck and driving before he finished talking. The tow yard was only 10 minutes from my apartment, but it felt like an hour. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. When I pulled through the gate, I saw Luis standing next to two police cars and a fire truck. The office building was still standing, but the windows were broken and black smoke stains marked the walls. "How bad?" I asked, getting out of the truck. "Could have been worse. Fire department got here fast." Luis pointed to the shattered office door. "They used a crowbar to get in, then poured gasoline around the computer desk and file cabinets." "Security footage?" "That's the thing. They knew exactly where the cameras were. Spray painted the lenses first, then went to work." Officer Martinez walked over with his notepad out. I'd known him for 3 years, ever since a drunk driver had crashed into his cruiser and we'd towed it in. "Jamal, I need to ask you some questions," he said. "Any idea who might want to damage your business?" I looked at the broken windows and the burn marks on the walls. Someone had been very careful about this. Professional, almost. They'd known about the cameras, known about the office layout, known exactly what they wanted to destroy. "Could be anyone," I said. "People don't like getting their cars towed." This wasn't some angry customer. This was planned. They brought gasoline, tools, knew their way around. Martinez clicked his pen. "You been having any personal problems lately? Divorce? Money troubles? Anything like that?" Luis gave me a look that said, "Be careful." "I'm going through a divorce," I said, "but I can't imagine my ex-wife hiring someone to burn down my business." Martinez wrote something in his notepad. "We'll need a list of anyone who might have access to your property. Employees, vendors, anyone with keys or alarm codes." "Just me and Luis." "What about family, friends? Anyone your ex-wife might know who'd have information about this place?" I thought about Ava's visits to the yard over the years. She'd come exactly 3 times in 2 years of marriage. Never stayed long, never paid attention to anything except how quickly she could leave. But Trent was different. Trent asked questions. Trent noticed things. "I'll make you a list," I said. After the police left, Luis and I walked through the office to see what was damaged. The computers were melted plastic and twisted metal. The file cabinets were scorched black. Years of business records turned to ash. "Good thing we kept backups," Luis said. "Yeah, good thing." But we both knew this wasn't really about destroying records. This was about sending a message. Someone wanted us to know they could reach us anywhere, anytime. "The safe?" I asked. Luis led me to the back corner where our fireproof safe sat behind a wall panel. The paint was blistered from the heat, but the safe itself was intact. "They tried," Luis said, pointing to crowbar marks around the edges, "but they didn't have time to really work at it." Inside the safe were the thumb drives with all the security footage. The footage of Trent and Ava stealing company property. The footage that had probably triggered the audit investigation at Sinclair Brands. "Think they knew about this?" Luis asked. "They knew about something. Question is what they were really after." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or it gets worse." I showed it to Luis. "Friendly," he said. "Real friendly." I took a picture of the text and forwarded it to Officer Martinez, then blocked the number. My phone immediately buzzed with another text from a different number. "This is just the beginning." "They're not very creative," Luis said. "Don't have to be creative when you've got money." We spent the morning cleaning up and making lists for the insurance company. The damage was bad but not fatal. We could rebuild, replace the equipment, start over. But starting over meant being vulnerable. It meant whoever did this would know they could hurt us, and I was getting tired of being hurt by people who thought they were better than me. Tuesday afternoon brought a knock on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman in a business suit with a briefcase and the kind of serious expression that meant trouble. "Mr. Reed, I'm Detective Sarah Williams with the Atlanta Police Department. I'd like to ask you some questions about the fire at your business." I opened the door and invited her in. Detective Williams was tall and sharp-eyed with gray streaks in her black hair. She moved like someone who'd spent years watching people lie to her face. "Coffee?" I asked. "Please." I poured 2 cups and we sat at my small kitchen table. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a tablet and a digital recorder. "Do you mind if I record this conversation?" "Go ahead." She pressed record and stated the date and time. "Mr. Reed, we've been investigating the arson at your business. We have some additional information that might interest you." "Such as?" "The accelerant used was high-grade racing fuel, not regular gasoline. The break-in tools were professional grade. And we found tire tracks in your parking lot from a vehicle that doesn't match any of your customers or employees." Detective Williams swiped across her tablet and showed me a photo. Tire treads, pressed into mud near the yard's back gate. "These are from high-performance tires, expensive ones, the kind you'd find on a luxury sports car." I sipped my coffee and thought about Trent's silver BMW. "You get any DNA? Fingerprints?" The perpetrators were careful. Gloves, masks, the works. But careful people sometimes make mistakes. She swiped to another photo. "We found this caught on a piece of fence wire. It was a small piece of dark fabric. Looked like it could have come from an expensive suit or maybe a cashmere coat. The lab is running tests, but I wanted to ask you about something else." Detective Williams leaned forward. "Have you received any threatening communications since the fire?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the 2 text messages. "Different numbers, but probably the same person using burner phones," she said, taking photos of the screen. "Mr. Reed, is there anything else you think I should know? Any other conflicts or disputes that might be relevant?" I thought about the security footage sitting in Luis's safe, about Ava and Trent stealing from her own company, about the black sedan that kept appearing across the street from my apartment. "Detective," I said, "what would happen if someone had evidence of a crime but wasn't sure whether they should turn it in?" "Depends on the crime, but generally speaking, withholding evidence can become a legal problem for the person withholding it. Even if turning it in might put them in danger? If you're in danger, that's what police protection is for. If you have evidence of a crime, that's what the justice system is for." She turned off the recorder and closed her tablet. "Mr. Reed, I've been doing this for 15 years. I can usually tell when someone is holding back information. Right now, you're holding back information. Maybe, maybe isn't good enough. Someone tried to burn down your business. Someone is sending you threatening text messages. Someone wants to hurt you, and I can't protect you if I don't know who or why." I finished my coffee and walked to the window. The black sedan was there again, parked in the same spot it had been using for days. "Detective Williams," I said, "you see that black car across the street?" She joined me at the window. "The sedan? It's been there almost every day since Friday. Different times, but same car, same spot." "You get a license plate?" "Yeah, and I've got something else you might want to see." Wednesday morning, I sat in a conference room at Atlanta Police Headquarters with Detective Williams, Luis, and a federal agent named Rodriguez, who joined the investigation when the case crossed from arson to corporate espionage. Luis had brought copies of all the security footage, everything from the last month, including the videos of Trent and Ava loading company property into his car in the middle of the night. "This is interesting," Agent Rodriguez said, watching the footage for the third time. "Mrs. Sinclair has access to company facilities, but Mr. Hale doesn't appear to be an employee." He's a consultant, I said, or that's what she told everyone. And you think this theft is connected to the arson at your business? I think someone doesn't want this footage to become public. Detective Williams pulled up the lab results on her tablet. The fabric we found at your yard came back with interesting results. Cashmere blend, expensive. The kind of thing you'd find in a coat that costs more than most people's rent. Or a scarf, Agent Rodriguez added. We checked the security footage from the Sinclair Brands building. Mr. Hale was wearing a cashmere scarf in several of the lobby camera shots. Luis leaned back in his chair. So, Trent tried to burn down our office to destroy evidence of him stealing from Ava's company. That's our working theory, Detective Williams said. But we need more than theory to make arrests. What about the threatening text messages? Agent Rodriguez opened his laptop. We traced the burner phones, both purchased with cash at the same electronics store in Buckhead. Store has security, cameras, but the buyer wore a baseball cap and sunglasses. Professional, Luis said, very, but not perfect. Agent Rodriguez turned his laptop around to show us a grainy security photo. A man, in a dark jacket and baseball cap, face mostly hidden but shoulders and build visible. Height and weight match Mr. Hale, he said, but it's not enough for a positive ID. I studied the photo. Something about the way the man stood, the way he carried himself, looked familiar. What happens next? I asked. We keep investigating, Detective Williams said. We build a case, and in the meantime, we keep you safe. What kind of protection are we talking about? Increased patrols around your apartment and business, plainclothes surveillance when needed, and you keep us informed of any new threats or suspicious activity. Agent Rodriguez closed his laptop. Mr. Reed, I want you to understand something. Corporate espionage cases can get complicated. Companies have lawyers, executives have connections, and sometimes the lines between legal and illegal get blurry. Meaning? Meaning be careful who you trust. Money changes people, and $500 million changes them a lot. After the meeting, Luis and I drove back to the tow yard in silence. The office was still a burned shell, but we'd set up a temporary workspace in one of the storage containers. You think they'll arrest Trent and Ava? Luis asked. Eventually. But Agent Rodriguez is right. Rich people have different rules. What about us? We just wait and hope nobody else tries to burn us down? I looked at the scorched walls and broken windows of our office. Someone had tried to destroy everything Luis and I had built together. They'd failed, but they'd made their point. They could reach us anytime they wanted. No, I said. We don't wait. What do you mean? I mean, it's time to stop playing defense. Wednesday evening, I was sitting on my porch when Eleanor Sinclair's silver Mercedes pulled up across the street. She got out slowly, like she was carrying something heavy, and walked across the wet pavement to my steps. Evening, she said. Evening, you look tired. I am tired. Mind if I sit down? I gestured to the chair beside mine. Eleanor sat down with a sigh and stared out at the streetlights reflecting off the wet asphalt. Bad day? I asked. Terrible day. The worst day I've had in 20 years. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The FBI served a search warrant on Sinclair Brands this morning. They took boxes of files, hard drives, security footage, the works. I'm sorry. Are you? I looked at her carefully. Eleanor's face was calm, but her hands were shaking slightly. Yeah? I said. I am sorry. I never wanted to hurt your family's business. But you're not sorry about exposing what Ava and that man were doing. No, I'm not sorry about that. Eleanor unfolded the paper and handed it to me. It was a printout of an email from Sinclair Brand's legal department to the board of directors. Preliminary investigation suggests theft of intellectual property valued at approximately $12 million. I read aloud. multiple instances of unauthorized access to secure facilities, evidence of coordination with outside parties to transfer proprietary information. $12 million, Eleanor said. That's what my daughter stole from her own family. What happens now? The board meets tomorrow to discuss her termination. The FBI will probably file charges by Friday, and her engagement to Mr. Hale is obviously off. Eleanor took the paper back and folded it carefully. She came to see me last night, she continued, crying, begging, promising she could fix everything. She wanted me to use my influence to make this go away. What did you tell her? I told her that some things can't be fixed. Some things have to be faced. We sat in silence for a while. Down the street, a police cruiser made its slow patrol past my building. Detective Williams had promised increased security, and she was keeping her word. Jamal, Eleanor said finally, I need to ask you something. Go ahead. Did you know, when you gave that footage to the authorities, did you know it would destroy her life? I thought about it. About Ava signing poor loser on those divorce papers. About Trent sneering at me in the country club parking lot. About someone trying to burn down my business. I knew it would have consequences, I said. I didn't know how big they'd be. But you did it anyway. I did it because someone tried to destroy my life first. Eleanor nodded slowly. Fair enough. But I want you to know something. Whatever she did, whatever she became, there was a time when Ava was a good little girl who brought me dandelions and thought they were beautiful. I remember that girl. I married that girl. Yes, you did, and I'm sorry she forgot how to be her. Eleanor stood up and smoothed down her coat. The FBI agent asked me about you. Agent Rodriguez. He wanted to know if I thought you were seeking revenge. What did you tell him? I told him that revenge is about hurting people. What you did was about protecting yourself. There's a difference. She walked back to her car, then stopped and turned around. Jamal, that little girl who loved dandelions, she's still in there somewhere, buried under years of bad choices and worse influences, but still there. That's good to know. Just don't expect her to resurface anytime soon. After Eleanor drove away, I sat on the porch until the streetlights came on. My phone had been quiet all day. No threatening texts, no unknown callers, no reporters asking for quotes. Maybe word was getting around that threatening a man under FBI protection wasn't the smartest move. Or maybe whoever had been making those calls was too busy dealing with their own problems. Either way, the silence felt good. I was about to go inside when I noticed something different about the black sedan's usual parking spot. It was empty. For the first time in a week, no one was watching me. That should have made me feel safer. Instead, it made me nervous. When predators stop circling, it usually means they're getting ready to attack. Thursday morning brought news that traveled fast through Atlanta's business community. Ava Sinclair had been terminated as CEO of Sinclair Brands, effective immediately. The board had voted unanimously to remove her pending the outcome of the federal investigation. I heard about it from Luis, who'd heard about it from his cousin who worked in the accounting department at Sinclair Brands. Stock price jumped 6% in pre-market trading, Luis said, reading from his phone. Investors are relieved she's gone. And Ava? Nobody's seen her. Her assistant said she cleaned out her office before dawn and left without talking to anyone. We were standing in the ruins of our office, making a list of everything that needed to be replaced. Insurance adjuster was coming by later to assess the damage and cut us a check. You think she'll try to contact you? Luis asked. Probably, but not yet. Right now she's got bigger problems than her ex-husband. Like federal charges for corporate espionage. Yeah, like that. My phone rang. Detective Williams. Mr. Reed, we need to talk. Can you come down to the station? What's wrong? We found the black sedan, and we found something else. 20 minutes later, I was back in the conference room at police headquarters. Detective Williams had files spread across the table, and Agent Rodriguez was on speakerphone from the FBI office. The sedan was registered to a shell company, Detective Williams said, traced back to a private investigation firm in Buckhead. High-end operation that specializes in corporate security and surveillance. Someone hired professionals to watch me? That's what it looks like. But here's the interesting part. She opened a file folder and showed me an invoice. The contract was signed by Trent Hale, paid for with a corporate credit card from Hale Consulting LLC. Agent Rodriguez's voice came through the speaker. Mr. Hale was paying private investigators to monitor your activities. The question is why? Probably wanted to know if I had more evidence of their theft operation. That's our theory too. But we found something else when we executed the search warrant on his office. Detective Williams opened her laptop and turned it toward me. On the screen was a photo of a wall covered with pictures, documents, and timeline notes. Pictures of me, pictures of my truck, pictures of the tow yard, pictures of my apartment building. Mr. Hale had been tracking your movements for months, she said, long before the divorce proceedings started. I studied the wall of surveillance photos. Some were taken at the tow yard during working hours. Others showed me leaving my apartment, getting groceries, having dinner at restaurants. This is a lot of work, I said. Professional level surveillance, the kind that costs serious money and takes serious planning. Agent Rodriguez spoke from the speaker. Mr. Reed, we think Mr. Hale suspected you had hidden assets long before the divorce. This surveillance operation was designed to find evidence of your wealth. So he could tell Ava about it? So he could figure out how to steal it? Detective Williams clicked to another photo. This one showed documents spread across a desk. Bank statements, property records, business filings, all with my name on them. Mr. Hale had been building a financial profile on you for at least 6 months, she said. He knew about your grandfather's land deals. He knew about the trust funds and the pending mineral rights buyouts. He knew exactly how much you were worth. And he told Ava, "We don't think so. We think he was planning to use this information for his own benefit." Agent Rodriguez's voice crackled through the speaker. The surveillance started in January. The theft from Sinclair Brands started in February. Mr. Hale discovers you're worth $500 million, then immediately begins stealing from his girlfriend's company. He needed startup money. For what? Detective Williams opened another file. Based on what we found in his office, Mr. Hale was planning to blackmail you. Evidence of hidden assets during marriage, potential tax evasion, failure to disclose wealth in divorce proceedings. He was building a case to extort money from you. I leaned back in my chair and tried to process what they were telling me. Trent hadn't just been stealing from Sinclair Brands, he'd been planning to steal from me too. The divorce papers, I said. Ava signing poor loser in front of everyone. That wasn't just humiliation, that was bait. To make you angry enough to reveal your wealth in court, Detective Williams agreed. And once your assets became public record, Mr. Hale would have everything he needed to demand payment for his silence. Except someone made a mistake. Several mistakes, the surveillance was sloppy, the theft from Sinclair Brands left too much evidence, and they underestimated how much evidence you had of their crimes. Agent Rodriguez spoke again. Mr. Reed, we're ready to make arrests, but we wanted you to understand the scope of what was happening here. This wasn't just corporate espionage. This was a coordinated effort to destroy your marriage, steal your wealth, and possibly frame you for crimes you didn't commit. What happens to Ava? That depends on how much she knew about Mr. Hale's plans. If she was just a pawn, she might face only the corporate theft charges. If she was a partner in the blackmail scheme, Detective Williams closed the laptop. We'll find out soon enough. I walked out of the police station feeling like the ground had shifted under my feet. For months, I'd thought I was just a man going through a difficult divorce. Turns out, I'd been the target of an elaborate criminal conspiracy. Ava hadn't just stopped loving me, she'd helped someone plan to destroy me. The question now was whether she'd done it knowingly or whether she'd been manipulated by someone even more ruthless than I'd imagined. Either way, tomorrow was going to be very interesting. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel sharp and clear. I was drinking coffee on my porch when the first police car pulled up across the street, then a second one, then an unmarked sedan that I recognized as Detective Williams' vehicle. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Rodriguez. Arrests happening now. Stay safe. I watched from my porch as law enforcement officers surrounded the building where the black sedan used to park. Turned out they'd been watching the watchers, and now it was time to close the net. Luis pulled up in his truck just as the police cars were leaving. Looks like Christmas came early, he said, climbing the porch steps. Something like that. Any word on who they got? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Detective Williams. Mr. Reed, we've arrested Trent Hale on charges of corporate espionage, extortion conspiracy, and arson. We've also arrested 2 men from the private investigation firm he hired to surveil you. What about Ava? She's being questioned. No charges yet, but that could change depending on what she tells us. She gonna talk? Rich people usually do once they realize how much trouble they're in. Money can buy good lawyers, but it can't change facts. After I hung up, Luis and I sat on the porch drinking coffee and watching the neighborhood wake up. For the first time in weeks, everything felt normal. No black sedans, no threatening text messages, no one watching from across the street. So what now? Luis asked. Now we rebuild, fix the office, replace the equipment, get back to work. That's it? After everything that happened, you just want to go back to fixing cars? I thought about it. A week ago, I'd been a mechanic going through a divorce. Now, I was a man worth $500 million whose criminal conspiracy had been exposed by federal agents. Yeah, I said, that's exactly what I want. What about the money? The trusts and land deals and all that? Money doesn't change who you are. It just shows people who you really were all along. Luis nodded slowly. And who are you, really? A guy who likes fixing things. Saturday afternoon brought the kind of surprise I should have seen coming. I was at the tow yard helping Luis install new security cameras when Eleanor Sinclair's Mercedes pulled through the gate. But Eleanor wasn't alone. Ava got out of the passenger seat slowly, like she was walking to her own execution. She looked smaller than I remembered, older. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wasn't wearing any makeup. Jamal, Eleanor said, walking toward me, Ava has something she needs to say to you. I set down my screwdriver and waited. Ava stood 10 feet away with her arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. When she finally looked up at me, her green eyes were red from crying. I'm sorry, she said, and her voice was barely above a whisper. For which part? For all of it. For signing those papers the way I did. For believing Trent's lies about you. For helping him steal from my own family's company. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. For forgetting who I married and why I married him. Luis appeared beside me with a wrench in his hand. He didn't say anything, but his presence made it clear that I wasn't alone. The FBI told me about the surveillance, Ava continued, about how Trent had been watching you for months, building files on your finances, planning to blackmail you after our divorce was final. And you didn't know? I swear I didn't know about the blackmail. I thought he just wanted to be with me. I thought he loved me. She laughed, but it sounded like crying. Turns out he loved my access to company information and my willingness to help him steal it. Eleanor stepped closer to her daughter. Tell him the rest. He never cared about me. He never cared about us. He was using me to get access to Sinclair brands, and he was planning to use our divorce to extort money from you. Ava's voice broke. I was just another tool in his plan to get rich. I looked at the woman I'd married 2 years ago, the woman who'd signed poor loser on divorce papers in front of half the country club, the woman who'd helped a criminal steal from her own family. She looked broken, empty, like someone had pulled the life out of her and left only the shell. I know you can't forgive me, she said. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry, and I needed you to know that none of this was your fault. I know it wasn't my fault. Good, because I spent years making you feel like you weren't enough, like you needed to be someone different to deserve love. She took a shaky breath. But you were always enough. You were always more than enough. Eleanor put her arm around Ava's shoulders. The charges? Corporate espionage and theft of intellectual property. My lawyer thinks I'll get 2 years in federal prison, maybe 3 if I don't cooperate with the investigation into Trent's other activities. Are you going to cooperate? Yes. Trent destroyed my life, destroyed my family's business, destroyed everything I cared about. Why would I protect him? Luis shifted the wrench in his hand. What about the divorce? Ava looked at the ground. It's final, signed and sealed, no spousal support, no claim to Jamal's assets, clean separation, exactly like the prenup specified. That's what you wanted, I said. That's what I thought I wanted. Turns out I was wrong. About a lot of things. Eleanor guided Ava back toward the car. We should go. You have a meeting with your lawyer at 4. Ava stopped halfway to the Mercedes and turned back to me. Jamal? That little apartment we shared before we got married? The one with the broken air conditioner and the neighbors who played music too loud? I remember. I was happier there than I ever was in the big house. I was happier eating takeout on the couch with you than I was at any fancy restaurant with him. She smiled, but it was sad. I wish I had remembered that before I threw it all away. She got in the car, and Eleanor drove away, leaving me standing in the tow yard with Luis and the smell of motor oil and the sound of traffic on the highway. You okay? Luis asked. Yeah, I'm okay. You believe her? About not knowing Trent's plans? I thought about it. About the woman who used to bring Eleanor dandelions and think they were beautiful. About the woman who'd been happy in our little apartment with the broken air conditioner. I believe she didn't know about the blackmail, but she knew about the theft. She knew about the affair. She made choices. And now she's got to live with them. Yeah, now she's got to live with them. Sunday morning brought a phone call that changed everything again. Mr. Reed, this is James Patterson from Patterson, Williams and Associates. I'm calling about your grandfather's estate. I was making breakfast and only half listening. Lawyers called sometimes about paperwork related to the trust funds and land deals. The mineral rights buyout you've been waiting on, Patterson continued. The energy company has accelerated their timeline. They want to close the deal this week. This week? Tuesday, if possible. The price has increased substantially due to new geological surveys. Instead of the original $50 million, they're offering $220 million for a complete buyout of all mineral rights on the property. I set down my coffee cup and sat down hard in the kitchen chair. Mr. Patterson, did you say $220 million? Yes, sir. New natural gas deposits were discovered last month, much larger than originally projected. The energy company wants to lock in the deal before other bidders get involved. And this is legal? All above board? Completely legal. You inherited full mineral rights from your grandfather's estate. The energy company has been paying small lease fees for 3 years while they conducted surveys. Now, they want to buy out your rights entirely. I did quick math in my head. 220 million plus the existing trust funds and land holdings, plus the pending highway expansion settlement. My net worth was about to jump from 500 million to over 700 million. Mr. Reed, are you still there? I'm here. Tuesday is fine. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring out the window at the apartment complex parking lot. A week ago, Ava had called me a poor loser. Yesterday, she'd apologized for destroying her life chasing after money. Today, I'd become richer than either of us had ever imagined. The irony was almost funny. Almost. Tuesday afternoon, I sat in a law office in downtown Atlanta, signing papers that would make me one of the wealthiest men in Georgia. The energy company executives were polite and professional, treating the whole thing like a routine business transaction, which, for them, it probably was. For me, it felt like stepping into someone else's life. The funds will be transferred to your designated accounts within 48 hours, the lead executive said, shaking my hand. Pleasure doing business with you, Mr. Reed. After they left, James Patterson walked me through the tax implications and investment strategies, charitable giving opportunities, estate planning considerations. You'll want to think about setting up a foundation, he said. Someone with your level of wealth has certain social responsibilities. What kind of responsibilities? Philanthropy, community investment, using your resources to make a positive impact. I thought about the tow yard with its burned office and broken windows, about Luis working overtime to help me rebuild, about kids in the neighborhood who needed jobs and apprenticeships and someone to teach them how to fix things. I know exactly what I want to do, I said. Wednesday morning, I drove to the courthouse for Trent Hale's arraignment, not because I wanted to see him sentenced, but because I wanted to see him face the consequences of his choices. The courtroom was smaller than the one where my divorce had been finalized. Fewer people, less drama, just lawyers and judges and the machinery of justice grinding slowly forward. Trent sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit that was a far cry from his usual expensive suits. His hair was uncombed and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. When the judge read the charges, Trent's face went pale. Corporate espionage, theft of intellectual property, conspiracy to commit extortion, arson in the first degree. How does the defendant plead? Trent's lawyer whispered something in his ear, but Trent shook his head. Not guilty, Your Honor. The judge set a trial date for March and denied bail. Trent would be staying in jail until his case was resolved. As the guards led him away, Trent turned and looked directly at me. His eyes were full of hate and something else, something that looked like fear. Good. He should be afraid. Outside the courthouse, I ran into Agent Rodriguez. How's it feel? He asked. How's what feel? Justice. Seeing the bad guys get what they deserve. I thought about it. About Trent in his orange jumpsuit. About Ava facing federal charges. About my burned office and threatening text messages and months of surveillance. It feels like the end of something, I said. Good thing or bad thing? Both. Thursday evening, I was working late at the tow yard when Eleanor Sinclair's Mercedes pulled through the gate, but this time, she was alone. Evening, she said, walking toward me. Hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Just replacing brake pads on a Honda. Nothing that can't wait. Eleanor looked around at the rebuilt office, the new security cameras, the fresh paint on the walls. You've done good work here, she said. Luis did most of it. I just helped. I meant before the fire. This business, what you've built with your partner. It's honest work. That's all I ever wanted. Honest work with good people. Eleanor pulled an envelope from her purse. I have something for you. Inside was a check for $12 million, made out to me, signed by Eleanor Sinclair. What's this for? Restitution for what Ava and that man stole from Sinclair Brands. Eleanor's voice was steady but tired. I know you didn't benefit from their theft, but you were hurt by it. Your business was attacked. Your life was threatened. This is compensation. Mrs. Sinclair, I can't take this. Yes, you can. And you will. She looked at me with the kind of expression that didn't allow for argument. My daughter made terrible choices. Those choices hurt innocent people. This is my way of making it right. What about Ava? How is she? Scared, ashamed, facing the reality that her actions have consequences. Eleanor walked to the window and looked out at the highway traffic. She'll serve her time. 2 years, maybe 3. When she gets out, she'll have to rebuild her life from nothing. She's strong. She'll figure it out. Maybe, or maybe she'll spend the rest of her life trying to become the person she used to be before she forgot how to love dandelions. Eleanor turned back to me. Jamal, I need to ask you something. Go ahead. Are you happy with how all this turned out? I thought about the question, about Trent in jail and Ava facing prison time, about my rebuilt business and my hidden fortune and my quiet life. I'm not happy about people getting hurt, I said, but I'm satisfied with the truth coming out. And your marriage? Any regrets about how that ended? Only one. What's that? I regret that I didn't see who she really was before I fell in love with who I thought she was. Eleanor nodded slowly. That's wisdom talking. Maybe, or maybe it's just experience. Friday afternoon brought the kind of warm sunshine that made you want to sit outside and watch the world go by. I was doing exactly that on my porch when Luis pulled up with 2 cups of coffee and a newspaper. You make the front page again, he said, handing me a cup and sitting down in the chair beside mine. The headline read, Local Businessman Establishes $100 million Education Foundation. They got the details right this time, Luis said. I'd announced the foundation on Wednesday. Full scholarships for kids who wanted to learn trades, apprenticeships, at local businesses, support for community colleges and technical schools, the kind of education that taught people to build things instead of just talking about building things. You sure about this? Luis asked. 100 million is a lot of money to give away. I've still got plenty left over. Besides, money's only good if you use it for something that matters. And teaching kids how to fix cars matters. Teaching kids how to work with their hands matters. Teaching them that honest labor has value matters. Teaching them that they don't need to be ashamed of who they are or where they come from matters. Luis nodded and sipped his coffee. Your grandfather would be proud. I hope so. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching neighbors walk their dogs and kids ride bicycles on the sidewalk. Normal life happening all around us. You hear anything about Ava? Luis asked. Eleanor says she's doing okay. Scared, but okay. You ever think about visiting her when she's in prison? I considered it. The woman I'd married was going to spend years in a federal facility, paying for choices that had destroyed her life and hurt people she claimed to love. No, I said. That part of my life is over. Fair enough. My phone buzzed with a text message, but this time it wasn't from an unknown number or a threatening stranger. It was from Maria Santos, the teenager who'd asked about apprenticeship opportunities at the yard. Mr. Reed, I got accepted to the community college automotive program. Thank you for the recommendation letter. I smiled and showed the text to Luis. First scholarship recipient? He asked. First of many, I hope. I typed back, Congratulations. Come by the yard when you start classes. We'll make sure you get plenty of hands-on experience. Luis finished his coffee and stood up to leave. You know what I like about this story? What's that? The bad guys are in jail, the good guys won, and you're still the same person you were before any of this started. Money doesn't change who you are. No, but it sure shows people who you really were all along. After Luis left, I sat on the porch until the sun started setting. My phone stayed quiet. No threatening texts, no unknown callers, no reporters asking for interviews. Just peaceful silence and the sound of traffic and the knowledge that tomorrow I'd go back to work, doing what I'd always done, fixing things that were broken, teaching kids who wanted to learn, building something honest with good people. The foundation would help hundreds of students, the tow yard would keep serving the community, and somewhere in federal prison, Ava would have time to think about the choices that had led her there. As for me, I had everything I'd ever really wanted: work that mattered, friends I could trust, and the quiet satisfaction that came from knowing I'd fought back without losing myself in the fight. Some mornings, Ava would probably still think about the life she'd thrown away, the apartment with the broken air conditioner, the man who'd loved her for who she was instead of what she could give him. And sometimes, when I was working under the hood of a car or teaching an apprentice how to change brake pads, I'd remember the woman who used to bring her mother dandelions and think they were beautiful. But mostly, I'd just be grateful for honest work, clear conscience, and the knowledge that the best revenge was a life well lived. Money couldn't buy that, but it sure didn't hurt to have it.